Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for joining us. Topic is very broad topic. It's a holistic hospitality where the Saudi is heading towards. So we are covering within that is regenerative tourism, environmental and social governance, and overall wholesome travel for Saudi in the coming days. Before I get into it, let me introduce a quick slide which gives you some numbers. As I was around since last 2 days, a lot of people are asking how many projects, what is happening in Saudi within this region. So let me share quick numbers for you, so it will help you to understand what is happening on a bigger picture. I have to turn it on. So overall, if you look at it, number of keys in 3 countries between Saudi, UAE, and Egypt is over 500,000 keys are coming to the market. It's in a pipeline. Well, giga projects, overall 225,000 keys are under development. Between Medina, Makkah, different religious, non-religious, overall keys is 225. So total number of keys in Saudi is 310 out of 500,000 in this GCC area. Overall tourism-related projects, 110 billion under development in KSA, and overall 500 billion USD including everything, all different mega, non-mega, hospitality, non-hospitality, is 500 million worth of a project. So this is for you who are here. There's enough for everybody. So this was important for you to know that how much, and overall it's just, the whole show hasn't started. It's just in the planning stages where you are still busy with this. It's just going to trickle down in the coming days. Thank you. First question, Oliver, if I come to you, regenerative tourism. How is it important and how it benefits the destination and the community? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so regenerative tourism is an issue that I would say has affected us or kept us occupied in the last, let's say, 15 years. Like every other industry, right? If you look at the global economy, every industry tries to become more sustainable, to be less depletive of resources, less extractive, and tourism is no different. The great thing about tourism is that it fosters exchange, openness throughout the world, and the question is how to do this in a way that is sustainable. Saudi Arabia has an incredible opportunity because when it comes to tourism, there's almost no legacy. Right? Saudi Arabia opened just over 2 years ago for leisure tourism.
Starting from scratch.
Starting from scratch, basically. Most hotels were in Mecca and Medina. So now we have the ability and the opportunity to really do things right from the beginning. And we see that. I mean, when you look at the communication coming from giga projects, Red Sea project, NEOM, etc., there's a tremendous focus on sustainability, on preserving resources and the environment. So, and we can ride on that. We can really make that also impact the image of Saudi Arabia as a tourism destination. So, starting from this point, having this awareness of the opportunity, I think is a great starting point. What I would like to emphasize on is when we think about sustainability and regeneration, we tend to think about the same things, like shortening supply lines, like using environmentally friendly materials, which is important, and it's good that we focus on that. But there's many other areas where we are just at the beginning. And I would like to mention waste, for example, food waste. When I was at EMEA several years ago, we really analyzed the kind of waste we had in our hotels, and I can tell you it was frightening. It was absolutely frightening, especially in hotels that have, big buffets, etc. It's sometimes more than 50% of what you purchase in food goes to waste, right? So this is an area where tremendous improvement is possible. Another area is hotel construction. And particularly in the Middle East, we have this challenge that often hotels are overinvested, too big in certain areas, right? So yes, we focus on how we cool buildings, we focus on lighting, etc. But if a building is oversized or a hotel is oversized, these areas which are not needed, first of all, they have to be built, so material is used, but then they have to be also maintained, cooled, lit, etc. So when we speak about regenerative sustainability, we also need to look at how we build hotels. And
so starting from a planning stage.
Starting from a planning stage, if you have a storage space which is oversized, which is too big, then you're stuck with it and you have to cool this area, right? So there is a lot of different angles, but I'm very confident because I think that we're really heading in the right direction, and this awareness is having a tremendous impact.
I just want to add what you touched base, very, very important points. In recent, let's say 1 year, I can count you dozens and dozens of hotels which are done. They have developed areas, they're not using it. They have developed parking, they haven't even touched it. They have developed storage, you can store another hotel in it. Here, you can clearly see that what you just mentioned is not only sustainability, but also in a planning stage, how much we can save out of it. So it's one small point, but you can see how much depth it has in it. Thank you. Mohammed, here we are developing a new destination, Saudi destination, which has its own cost. And then we add regenerative elements into it. You think this will not add up a cost, or what are your views on this? On a long run, how you see it?
No, thank you. First of all, yes. I think with the new projects also that are coming up or planned, definitely they are associated with costs, especially they are in remote areas. And we have been listening throughout the conference here today and yesterday about the ways that it has been introduced to make sure that it's environment friendly, it's also cost-wise, and also involvement in the communities. We are lucky that our tourism platform is relied on different type of components. So on the natural side, on cultural, on geographical, and so and that's only happens probably in few countries that like Saudi Arabia. So around that you have the diversity of the products and then the offerings. I think with that, definitely, and my colleague here said, optimizing the designs, optimizing the method, creating even adopting the new types of structures that are going to be built, making sure that it will not affect the environment. I think that is the breakthrough for the success of this project.
Thank you. Amir, in regenerative tourism, big boys like you, influential, plus you have international exposures already from different destinations. How you can add a value towards regenerative tourism?
Yeah, look, I think let's go back, right? Let's go back to the days of our founder, Connor Hilton, over 100 years ago. He created this company, and he believed then that travel and tourism was a force for good, was something that would that could benefit the planet. And he felt that we should be good to each other, and he felt that we should be good to the planet. And this was long before the trend or the understanding of the impact of travel and tourism kind of became apparent. And since then, his focus has been on, and our company's focus has been on ensuring that we protect those communities that our hotels are present in, and that we do our best to minimize the impact that our hotels have on those environments, and also give back to those environments that we're present in. And when he first, and just come to the point that Olivier mentioned earlier about understanding of cultures. When we first moved into Turkey, into Istanbul, we were the first international brand to move into that country. He said, Conrad Hilton said, when you first move into that country, when you first kind of meet your business partners in Turkey, they offer you a cup of coffee. And if you share that cup of coffee with them, you're then committed to a lifetime of friendship with them. And he felt that if we all can continue to drink that proverbial cup of coffee, then we're helping out in the struggle for world peace. And that ethos and that philosophy has continued throughout Hilton and really underpins who we are as a company in terms of the communities that we're active in and how we interact with the environment around us. And a lot of that is now reflected in our corporate sustainability program, ESG program called Travel with Purpose. And it's something that we've been committed to as a company when we've entered into markets like Abuja, for example, where no one had kind of dared to go before, Buenos Aires. Hilton's always been a pioneer in these markets. But what's been important is that when we enter those markets, and we take a very cautious approach as to which sites we select, that we're not interrupting the environment, that is in a pristine condition. We prefer to select a site that is actually already, potentially has been deforested or has had some environmental damage done to it, so that we can help to enhance that site itself. So it's something called site repair. We're actually going into those destinations, actually repairing those sites that have been previously, through landscaping, foresting of trees and so on. But also importantly is working with the communities that we're in. And the effect of that is felt strongly in the community. And that was definitely the case in Abuja when we moved into Abuja, and that ended up becoming one of the best performing hotels in our portfolio and transforming the entire community. So we gave back so much to the community. We recruited locally, we sourced locally. So I think when we talk about that regenerative tourism, it's not only about the environmental impact, it's about the cultural impact as well. And that starts with education. And if you do not understand the person that you're doing business with, or what matters to them,
the local culture, the local
culture, the local customs, the local history, the history of that destination, how can you actually have a motivation to protect it? You're more incentivized to protect that destination.
This is the best way. The big boys like Hilton, Intercon, Marriott, with hundreds and hundreds of properties all across the globe. This is where you can help the destination like Saudi, bringing your expertise and help the local communities and local culture to preserve it. So this is where you can play a big role there.
Definitely.
Just to share with you how powerful these guys are, Mr. Marriott and Mr. Hilton's. Like here, Amir only is 110 properties operating, 160 in GCC, or 160 properties under development. Same goes to Dimitris, he around 64 operating and 27 under development. So there's so much projects in the pipeline that they can really make a difference and help us in those areas. Coming back, Dimitris, to you, how in the coming 10 years you see regenerative tourism can help Saudi in shaping its culture and expansion together in parallel, but complementing each other? What do you see?
Yeah, you probably noticed from my surname, I'm actually Greek, and Greeks love metaphors. So there is a metaphor that I would like to use about what is going on in Saudi. Saudi is like the Formula One for tourism. When Formula One, all the great innovations in the car industry, it gets tested first in Formula One. and then they become a reality 5, 6, 10 years ago, or 10 years later, right? And those drivers, they are not just rich kids or spoiled jet setters. They're actually testing things that are going to make our lives much nicer and safer in the world in the days and the years to come. So I like to think of the kingdom as the Formula One for tourism, because there's so much innovation, there's so many new things get tested in so many different areas, from foodways, design, agriculture, mixing with the local community, new ideas. All of these things in the next 5 to 10 years, you will see them happening around the world. The only challenge is that not everybody can afford to actually do it now in Mauritius or, I don't know, in a Greek island or whatever, because they haven't got the money. So the good news about Saudi is, A, they're using the money for a good cause, one. They're putting pride through tourism back in their youngest population in the Middle East. So there's a lot of pride of what these guys are going to be doing. There's a lot of new innovation that gets tested today in all these amazing projects, which in 5 years from today, you will see them happening in other parts of the world. And at the same time, they do it for the good of the planet. When I don't have the pleasure of having 100 years, Wyndham has only been around for 16 years as a company, but we haven't got the pleasure of being around for 100 years. But when my chairman, who's still alive, thank God for him, he asked us why we're doing ESG, why this is important to us. And we all came back with all sorts of great answers. Oh, we do it because of this. No, you're doing it because of your kids. Because it's important for your own family, it's important for your own kids. So all of that rejuvenation and regeneration and sustainability is not just about because Wyndham or any other brand wants to look good and do the right thing. It's that, but at the same time, we do it for our own kids. So that is extremely important. For me, watching what is going on in Saudi is like watching Formula One creating the cars of the future that are going to make me and my kids safer.
So 10 years from now, we can see a different tourism setup in Saudi.
I
put
think
it ahead or parallel to some of the
I think Saudi is going to start so much innovation that people will copy-paste, will improve in some cases, but it will be the test drive or it will be the circuit where a lot of new things will get tested for the rest of the world to actually find out how they can actually deploy it in their own countries. We're not going to have in Mykonos or in a Greek island the same mega projects, but you can learn a lot of things of what is actually happening in Saudi, and you can deploy in a new property in Mykonos in 5 years from today, and that's important.
Please,
yes, may I add something? I think that's a good point. The competition in the tourism market is also very important. Definitely, we're coming up with Saudi, we're coming up with the new destination, new world destination, targeting the whole globe. However, let me give you an example. We have been doing something with the Ministry also of Tourism, where we have identified points of attraction to the global tourism direction. And who was involved in this basically are the wholesaler of the travel. So we have identified probably about 100 locations. Some of them nobody has even reached. And the benchmark again is what's happening in the world. So some of those are the travelers, they have the same thing set up in Mexico, for example. And one is competing with Oman. And so I think it's a holistic basically view of the whole offering that could be provided. And this is what you were saying. Basically, yes, you have a new things to be experimented. You have new things to be offered, probably the best in the world. But again, you still have to have those types of people that they want to go to their life places. They do the same activity, but now in a different location with accessibility.
So good news for all the guys with the new products. Saudi is your testing ground. So happy to any new creativity, innovation you want to test, we are at your service in Saudi. That's what you need.
Just add another point as well to what you were saying, Mohammed. But in terms of like Saudi as a destination, I think it's probably one of the most untouched, diverse naturally diverse countries that's experiencing tourism growth at the moment. If you look at the trend of a typical kind of tourism area life cycle, it always starts with those, the profile of tourists that's called an allocentric tourist, the explorer type tourist. He wants to go out, he wants to see something he's never seen before. Nobody's seen anything of Saudi. Even a lot of Saudis haven't seen a lot of Saudi, right, until COVID. That's opened up a massive opportunity for domestic tourism. And they've explored those secondary and tertiary cities, some stunning cities.
Just to share some of you, what Amir is just is touching is this point that I've been advisor to Dubai Tourism, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, multiple tourism authorities. I have never seen, even in the books, my education is specialization. Saudis, they are doing tourism, not only there's one master tourism. Each region has its own tourism plan, and each plan, the goal is to make sure that particular, is it Najran, is it Jazan, is it Abha, a full detailed tourism plan for each region. Apart from 30, there's a master tourism plan. So you can imagine how detailed it is. Apart from that, there are 13 within Tourism Authority and Culture, Ministry of Culture, there are 11 different subsections. Is it culture, is it history, is it interior, is it motifs, which motif Saudi needs to take it? Is it music? I'm working right now how to modernizing the music. So it's so much detail what he's saying. So they are picking up the unique music from different part of Saudi and bringing it to the mainstream and then taking it out to the world as a soft power. So it is that detailed work is going on.
Yeah, that's right. And just going back to what I was saying about the eco and kind of ethno-tourism, that's probably the fastest growing trend in the industry today. And I think that's probably the way it's going to continue. People, there's not so many locations or sites that kind of have that, right? And Saudi is a very unique market. It's got that range of diverse kind of natural tourism assets. It's got the funding, it's got the leadership to actually deliver it. So it's a very unique country. But what's going to be important is that as you kind of move up that tourism life cycle, going from an explorer type tourist up to the mass tourists, we obviously protect those destinations, protect those sites and heal the damaged sites that are there. And that's where our role as operators and brands and developers comes in. And I think from a policy perspective, that's something that the government you look at the projects like the Red Sea, Neon, they've all got a very strong sustainability criteria, which is great. And you don't want to fall into the trap of the 200 kilometers west of Jeddah, where unfortunately those coral reefs have been damaged and the tourism industry suffers. So I think the preservation is something that we all really need to focus on.
Olivier, you are also advising Ministry of Tourism, strategic advisor. How regenerative tourism, some remote region, Jazan, Najran, far away from the center, we know there's a lot of money pumped in the Red Sea and key area. How regenerative tourism can help remote areas, the communities there, what benefit they can get out of it? What do you think?
Well, first of all, every paper that I see, whether from the Ministry of Tourism or, as you mentioned, from the regions, whether it's roadmaps, whether it's specific projects, sustainability, regeneration is always part of it, right? So it's really fully ingrained in the overall country strategy. But the benefits are multiple, right? Whether it's employment, whether it's openness, opening it, or a certain global opening towards the rest of the world. Whether it's investment into the area. So and also positioning in a different way a region, a destination through this channel, right? Because there's so many ways to have a destination that is sustainable, that is environmentally friendly. That it also becomes a competitive factor, which is good because the Greeks are also philosophers, and then the question is always: do you do things because they're inherently good or because there's a good outcome? In my way, in my view, in this case, it's irrelevant. At the end of the day, if an industry or a company operates in a sustainable way, what their motivation is not that relevant because the outcome is great. And I believe that we are lucky today to have a convergence of trends which support all of this. Because, look, I've been in hospitality 35 years, right? And so I was working in hospitality when sustainability started.
Initiated.
So, and it was a struggle, right? It was difficult. I mean, we started with, the towels on the floor, etc. It lasted, many years until it was accepted. What was the reason? The reason was that there were a lot of compromises required, right? The guests didn't really want it. They wanted fresh towels. They wanted their linen in the bed, changed every day. Look at where we are today. If you look at all the stakeholders, let's look at a hotel, for example. The guest is very much focused on these areas and is actually also willing to, in certain cases, pay more, in certain cases, accept a certain inconvenience, just to be, to know that they support the environment. Hotel owners, Amir, you know that, and Dimitris also. How difficult was it in the past to convince owners to build sustainability into a new hotel? Today, it's much easier because there is a certain push from the customer, but also it makes good business sense, right? Then you have regulations, which are also kind of driving the industry into that direction. So everything is driving us into operating in a sustainable way. And then you have the social media, which
is helping the cause.
Well, you can discuss a lot whether social media are good or bad, but what social media do is they basically communicate to the world what you do right and what you don't do right? And when something goes viral, it's unstoppable. So that also pushes regions, companies, individual hotels to do the right thing. So I'm very optimistic that this will continue. And I really believe that there will be a time, I don't know when this happens, when our industry will actually be neutral in terms of resource usage, in terms of depletion. We will achieve a level where we will no longer be depleted in terms of the environment. It will take time, but we're heading in that direction.
Question, I open it to all of you. And do you think it's not only intent, the government is planning for it, but if other supporting rules, regulation, all different elements, are they going in the same direction, so they are helping each other to accelerate the process? What do you think, Mohammed?
I think this is a good point.
So my purpose is not that I have intention, not that I have money, but if the rules, regulation, it's not helping me, so
not only the new rules. You mentioned now the Minister of Culture, for example. That also a part of the stakeholders. So now you're going to make sure that everybody is working the same aim. One of the things that I want to just say here is that it's not only this. There are so many initiatives. If you've seen the areas of the what's it called, Royal Reserve, Royal Natural Reserve in Saudi, it's covering most of Saudi. Nobody had ever probably done it in the country like that. And it's really reserved and nobody even can touch it now. We've been asked to do some of the work there and I could see. So there are some attempts for everybody. It's from the Ministry of Tourism, the whole government is working through this. And probably another aspect, it's very easy to go and spend the money, do all the green initiative, the sustainable development, whatever. But there is a KPI also in that. There is a KPI, commercial KPI.
For multiple entities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for tourism, for example, the portion of the GDP right now, tourism is 3.9 probably around.
Which has to go to 11%.
It has to go 10, 11% in 2030. So there is an aim. So it's not only one type of dimension of handling this. Everything is the economics, the nature, the environment, and all the stakeholders have to move toward that.
So, just to share with you the volume of hospitality business in general, what just Mohammed said, if you pick his statement up, is 3% of the total GDP. It's going to go to 11% in the coming years. So look at the quantum, the volume of this business that is shifting from oil and other sector towards tourism. From 3% of GDP to 11%. So there's a huge shift. So it means we all are part of it in a positive manner.
You know, and it's interesting what Mohammed said. At some point, you need to ask yourself, what do you want to be remembered for? You know, when the next generations talk about any of us, what do you want to be remembered of? And I think that there was at some point that critical moment when somebody said in that leadership, we want to be remembered for something else than what it is today. And this is the critical moment where
towards positive, you mean?
Absolutely. And we want to be remembered for something else. We don't want to be remembered just a nation that produces oil. We want to be remembered for something else. They came up with a vision of 2030. You need a plan. If you don't coordinate, if you don't have a compass, everybody's going to be around like a headless chicken, all trying to do the right thing, but no plan. So you need that compass. So they created that compass. That compass was created because they had the political willingness, and at the same time they had the money and the appetite. And at the same time, I'm sitting. As I said, we are extremely happy with the business, and we're partners with Mohammed in Saudi. If you look at it from a competitive perspective, I'm Greek. I look at the Greek tourism and how the Greek tourism is developed. I feel jealous. I feel jealous of what is happening there because a lot of our development wasn't actually planned. It happened, and we thought that it happened because I remember one of our slogans: "Greece chosen by the gods." Actually, nobody's chosen by the gods. We had 12 of them, but it was 5,000 years ago. So it's all about the planning. It's all about the will. It's all about what do you want to be remembered for, and at the same time, it has to do with the pride of the people. I think what is actually happening now, that enormous, strong young population in Saudi is extremely proud of what is happening in the country from a tourism perspective, and discovering, and exactly as Amir said, the local population, nobody can underestimate the power that they have of traveling within their own country. So if you put all of this together, you have a very, very interesting mix of things that can actually take Saudi Arabia and its tourism in the next century.
So what Dimitris, if I quickly, one sentence translated quickly is, there must be a plan, there is a plan. There must be a strategy, there is a strategy. And the most important, what you mentioned, willingness from the top, which is rare here in other part of the world. Here, there's a willingness and involvement from top that is making a difference between average or successful destinations towards hopefully what we see in the coming few years, what Saudi market will look like.
Yeah. Just to add to that.
Please,
well,
Amir.
As operators, as major hotel brands, between us operating millions and millions of rooms globally, we try and reflect our corporate, sustainability, ESG targets and strategy into our policies and procedures at a unit level. It comes down from a corporate, but ultimately, I think that's great. But there's two things that are really going to help to influence that and actually make enforce these requirements, which is government regulation and financing and funding of hotels. We have a very strong.
You mentioned three now.
Two.
Regulations
and financing.
Okay.
The first government regulations. So, as major brands, we have a duty, I believe, to advocate on behalf of the industry, the entire industry, to influence government policy to actually make, our travel with purpose goals actually become legislation. So that there is, because as much as we can talk about it, it's not going to happen unless, for a lot of people, it's not going to happen unless it's actually enforced upon them.
But do you think it's happening or not happening?
No, I think it's happening. You know, we have this role to play, and at Hilton we're doing that. If you looked, I mean, during the pandemic, you know, during COVID, our CEO was advocating, Christian Setter was advocating on behalf of the entire industry that our industry is in trouble, right? And our industry is made up of millions of people from some of the most disadvantaged, you know, income levels in the world, and these people need help.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. They've been impacted by it. So talking about community, this is an absolutely critical thing that we need to do for them. So he's advocating on behalf of them, and this is, you know, in terms of our sustainability criteria and our social impact, this is something that we as major brands have a duty to influence. The second is financing, and something that's happened recently in Europe in the last year, just over the last year. They've introduced the sustainable financing disclosure regulations, where institutional capital has an obligation. And in Europe, most of the funding for hotel projects is institutional. Those institutional lenders have an obligation to disclose the loans that they are providing to hotel developers and hotel owners to make sure that they are fulfilling those sustainability criteria. If they're not, then they will be investigated, and, you know, ultimately there can be some penalties. What I like about the SFDR regulation is that it incentivizes the developer and the owner that, in terms of the loan margin, that if they exceed those levels, their loan margin benefits, and if they don't exceed it, then they'll not get penalized. In the Middle East, it's actually different because the profile of funding is different, because it's more high net worth individuals, you know, family, merchant families, sovereign funds. But I think if you're able to introduce that, you know, that principle into the region, then that will also help to enforce it. And, you know, the likes of the PIF have clearly got a very strong sustainability agenda as well, which is.
I think if this, where I started with you, that big boys like you, with the local trendsetters like a Red Sea, Amala, Qiddiya, if they set a trend, you have no choice, because they're following this in terms of regulations.
The developer and the
their own internal regulations is pushing them to go. So if you as big brands, them as the main driver of tourism in the country, they together move towards regulation and you know, adopt the practices, it will become the law of the in the coming days. Great. The environmental social responsibility, do you think post-pandemic the scenario has changed? Now it's more triggered, it's more what seems to be a very long journey now, it seems more short-term to achieve those goals. What do you think on it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the pandemic has had a tremendous impact on awareness, on realizing, you know, what is important, on preserving what we have. I think everybody saw the videos that went around. It was pretty much at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, fish in Venice, and then, you know, things like how quickly also nature can recuperate, you know, when once suddenly things come to a halt. So I think these things, they will have an impact. But
Quicker, faster than actually.
yeah, absolutely. Then if there hadn't been a pandemic, but we also see things like you know, the change of perception of luxury, for example. We've seen this changing since a number of years, but the pandemic, in my view, has accelerated and exacerbated that. Right? When I started in hospitality in the 80s, luxury was seen as very different than today. You know,
So the definition has altered.
It has altered, and I think it has altered in a positive way, because in the 80s, you know, you had to have your salmon coming from Norway, your lamb coming from New Zealand, right? There's still some of that, but when you see the trend towards local products,
Local producers,
right?
yes.
And this is another great opportunity for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabian cuisine is unknown across the world, so Saudi Arabian producers is unknown. So showing that to the world and riding on this trend of link to locality is a great opportunity.
I just highlight
Greek feta.
Yeah, a good trend.
I just highlight a quick, like Hilton has a big drive where they are getting promoting the local producers in UAE, and now they are in the process to start in Saudi too, where they will encourage the local producers to be used in all the 5-star and Michelin star restaurants. Dimitri, financially will we benefit? Can I get a little bit better ADR on it? Occupancy on it?
Yeah.
And as one of our colleagues asked yesterday, while I'm doing a transaction of my property tomorrow, 10 years down to the road, exiting it, will it benefit me?
Yeah, I think doing the right thing always benefits people, right? And this is about doing the right thing. And I fully agree with Olivier. You challenge the paradigms. I think what happened the last 2 years, yes, CFOs became extremely happy the last 2 years because nobody was traveling, so they made a lot of money for their balancing, right? But guess what is happening now? Somebody has to spend that money, and somebody has to make sure that we travel again, and the world is out there enjoying themselves. So am I going to benefit if I do the right thing? The answer is yes. The only challenge that I see is what is the right thing? And this might get a bit confusing. Because suddenly in the last 2 years, and I fully agree with you, in the last 2 years, the paradigms have changed. As I was growing up, right, I'm 58 years old. When I grew up, the success was a leather chair, a corner office, a company car, and 1 million air miles. Now my daughter, my eldest daughter, who's 24, thinks that I'm a waste of time and the worst thing that happened to humanity. Because all these 4 things, they're not to happen anymore. So you don't need a corner office. Actually, you don't need an office at all.
You don't need an office.
Every time I travel, my daughter gets completely upset and says, you're a waste of time. You're killing the planet. I mean, she doesn't know that I'm here, by the way. So don't. I hope this is not televised anywhere. She doesn't believe in a leather chair or a company car. She doesn't even believe in cars, and she's 24 years old. So that generation has actually taught us that, you know what, guys, what you thought was the right thing a few years back, actually, wake up and smell the coffee is not the right thing anymore, or is not your success. And I think what is actually happening now is you bring all these amazing brains on board who tell you, you know what, I get it, that is the right thing, but that was the right thing 10 years ago. The right thing for the next decade is this way. And unless you adapt, at some point, your balance sheet and your books, they're not gonna balance because somebody else will be ahead of the curve.
So we are gonna get a top line better. Let's take it from me. What about our revenue wise? It will help. What about the expenses? By adapting to the sustainable ways, will we maintain or control or lower our expenses in the longer run? Operating costs will come down.
Since we've been monitoring our impact, our environmental impact, in terms of water waste, energy since 2008 as a baseline. We've calculated, and we're able to do this, by the way, because we have a proprietary IT platform called Lightstay that allows us to track all of our 7,000 hotels globally in terms of their performance. So we've calculated since 2008 well over $1 billion of savings by implementing those.
My God, $1 billion.
Yeah. So it's definitely, there's benefits to it in terms of development as well. If you can start to bring in passive design elements as well, that can, through the life cycle of the hotel, reduce those ongoing AC lighting costs and whatever, then there's a benefit. Just in terms of like the exit, what I was just saying about these, the capital markets, financial markets, this is not a trend. This is definitely going to only increase in the future. They will have these criteria. Your hotel will not be able to transact at similar yields without having those sustainability criteria in place, which will impact your value negatively.
Thank you, gentlemen. So it's confirmed here. We will take it in writing from them too. The top line will enhance, operating costs will reduce, and overall, if you're exiting tomorrow, which every business sometime in their life they have to exit, is a huge benefit. Please, any questions that our panelists can help you answering your questions, please? Please.
Hi, Jawed. My name is Mohammed. I'm from Saudi. So most of those projects being covered from west of Saudi Arabia. And I heard there is a project in western Saudi Arabia. It's called the Rig, which is a transforming Rig into entertainment hub. And I wonder if Mr. Oliver can answer me. Thank you.
I discovered David Guetta. Is he playing there? I discovered David Guetta recently from my daughter. So if he's playing, I'm there. I need to get you some brownie points.
That would be good. Thank you.
Excuse me, Saleem.
Please, Mr.
Mohammed probably he didn't present himself. I met him yesterday. He's one of hundreds of thousands of young Saudis now studying in the most, what's it called, the schools, prestigious school in the world. So good. And I was telling yesterday, I was telling this to Dimitris here. There are about 500,000 already went outside to study in the past 76 years. And almost every family in Saudi has someone who went into that trip to come. And this is what's really moving the country. So whatever we said about the tomorrow, supplies, everything is there. Where are the qualified people? They are there. Probably they will be trained and so on. He's graduating, by the way, master's degree from which university?
Mabruk,
So,
congratulations.
Please, any offers? I have 10% of.
We have.
You're his manager?
Yes.
Oh, you're a manager?
I am the
Oh, I'm going to go 10%? Oh, that's...
Can I get 3?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One for the legalization part, which is the tourism authority somehow. Normally in your standards, to give a star rating, you put the minimum requirement, but you never put the maximum requirement, which gives the liberty to the hotel operator. Some luxury brands, they ask for 70 square meter room, 60 square meter room. If you are talking sustainability, that's totally away from sustainability. I mean, you will use more wood, you will use more electric power to air condition these areas and all these things. So as a ministry or as a government, I think you should put a cap to this, because also that makes the owners suffer. That's the first question. The second question, previously in accounting, you are not allowed to leave any kind of money in the pocket for the next year. After seeing what happened with the COVID and the pandemic, I think that some of there should be a risk reserve left, instead of laying off half of the employees with no jobs, with no source of living, due to some kind of pandemic or something like that. So did it start to have a risk reserve at the moment? Does the hotel start having a risk reserve, talking to their owners if they can leave a risk reserve for such instance for at least 1 year? Thank you.
Let's go to the first one. Anybody would like to pick? First of all, none of us are from the tourism authority. But we will still answer on their behalf.
Size does matter. I guess, and I don't want to talk about Amir, but I guess from the Wyndham perspective, one of the things that we learned the last 2.5 years, and I don't know if you know about Wyndham, we're the world's biggest franchisor of hotels. We've got about 9,000 hotels, 22 brands. One of the things that we learned across the brands is that what used to be is not anymore. What used to be is not anymore. So when we talk about brand standards, when we talk about things that actually make sense, what the book said 3 years ago, the book doesn't say anymore. And it was hard. It was hard for all of us because you take people like Olivier, 20, 30 years of hospitality, we always worked in books. This is where you put the towel, this is where you put the sockets. And I was talking to somebody earlier saying the most important thing is were the sockets, because we travel with 5 devices. So it's important that what it used to be is not anymore. And this is what we convey to our owners as well. When they come to us and say, you know, I'm going to build 65 square meters, does it actually make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't anymore, right? You see this. I mean, I was so happy to be here and listen to all of you the last couple of days and talking about new designs, new ideas, how you make rooms more functional. You know, at the end of the day, what is it, ladies and gentlemen? A good bed, a decent shower, clean room, strong Wi-Fi, and lots of sockets to plug your devices that you travel with. Everything else is an add-on.
Yeah,
It's
couple of one thing. I'm also involved in hotel classification with different governments. So classification books, what they were yesterday, as Dimitris said, they are changing. Some have changed, like I just, a few months back, we received the Saudi Tourism Authority new classification rules. A lot has changed in it. Those and others, I assure you, being in touch with other authorities, they are in a process to revise and change a lot of stuff. So changes are happening, but that level. Second is, bigger rooms like you mentioned. We are doing a night, Frank, I'm doing a new study of future trends in hotels. One of the questions coming in, people are saying we don't need cupboards. Why do we need cupboards? Young generation, they don't use cupboard at all. They're not hanging anything. They're not taking out anything from the bags. So forget about the cupboard. They take from there, they put it back, the same shirt. So things are evolving during this period. So you will see the reflection. Immediately, you're right, it's not there, but it is coming on its way. On the government level, rules are changing and adapting to it.
I think this was an extremely good point because in my experience, it's really at the regulatory level where things are lagging, right? So the star system is mostly obsolete anyhow, but many countries still have a star system. When you look at the requirements in order to have a 5-star product, these are requirements that are not asked by the customer. The hotelier doesn't need neither, but it's still there because it takes time to change. But I would like to clarify one thing, is that in my view, the new form of luxury is not austerity, right? It's not about keeping, simplifying everything and everything has to be smaller. It's about, as Dimitris said, getting out of the paradigms and the existing structures. I mean, there is demand for 50 square meter rooms, resorts. And if the customer is, if the guest wants that and is willing to pay for that, right? That's fine. And this 50 square meter room can be built in a sustainable way, etc. We know the state of the art, BMS, all this is fine. When I talk about waste in hotel construction is when a hotel is automatically built with a huge ballroom, right? Because a hotel has to have a big ballroom, even if there's no demand. And then this ballroom sits empty, right?
Yes.
It has to be cooled empty. This is waste. Back of the house, etc. So there is a lot of areas which are not necessary, where there is wasted investment and then wasted cost. But 5 restaurants in a hotel, if there's a demand for it, if that increases the competitiveness of the hotel, why not?
Any other, please?
Good afternoon. Samar from Intercontinental Hotel. My question, except the Hollistic situation, Makkah and Medina, normally if we talk about the business segmentation, it's mainly the government sector. Then we have the corporate, which is mainly the farmer, and after that it's coming the leisure. So now my question to Olivier, as advisor to Minister of Tourism, and since most of the projects coming up, it's mainly targeting the leisure sector, which is like in Red Sea projects or Amala or even development of ABA, it's mainly targeting the leisure. What are the steps that have been taken from the ministry to enhance or to bring up this sector of leisure to the government sector or to the corporate? If I am going for leisure, I don't want to spend all my day in the hotel. I need some other things where I can enjoy in the same area. So what are the steps taken by the Ministry of Tourism to enhance this segment and bring it up to the level of the corporate and the government sector? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So the ministry works very closely with PIF and its portfolio companies. And especially the giga projects, to make sure that we're talking about holistic hospitality, but it's about having a holistic tourism offerings and to create destinations in its own right. So it is only accessory infrastructure that is important, the leisure facilities, and also one area that the Ministry of Tourism is very keen on is the development of the labor force talent, because you can see it as an opportunity and a challenge, right? The challenge is that Saudi Arabia is very keen on Saudization for the right reasons, right? There's quite a big population, and a lot of things have to happen in order to make tourism attractive as a career path, which is not the case. It's changing, but when you look at statistics about young Saudis, high school leavers, what's top of their agenda in terms of industry, tourism and hospitality is usually not there. So that's a challenge. The opportunity is, we were speaking about trends, and authenticity is a big trend in hospitality, right? So in Saudi Arabia, we have the opportunity to populate our hotels with Saudi talent, which is a big difference to, let's look at Dubai, for example. As beautiful as Dubai is as a destination, but when you go into a Dubai hotel, you will not be attended by an Emirati just because of the way the population is structured. So these are things that the Ministry of Tourism is looking at very closely. So there is a lot of initiatives going on, apprenticeship programs, vocational programs. To give you a figure, we expect the needs of the kingdom to be around 500,000 talents for hospitality alone, 1.6 million for tourism, as projected by the Ministry of Tourism, and a big number of that should be Saudi. So a lot of focus on vocational program, because what happened in the past is that there was a lot of focus on management, right? They were, if you look at the Red Sea project, Qiddiya, they had partnerships with universities, international universities, but this was addressing only 5% of the talent needs, which is middle management, senior management. 95% is really entry level. So very active and close collaboration, which is great to see.
Thank you very much, Dr. Turab. Thank you.